So now we're going to experiment with something called, it's a technique called wet on wet. So what that means is you're using very wet paint on very wet paper. Okay, so in order to get the paper wet, I have to physically, oh, this is a little dirty, my paint water, sorry about that, but I'm just going to physically paint the paper with water so that the paper gets wet. Okay, so I have like a little square here of wet paper. And now I'm going to kind of bring in some of those other techniques, especially like the fade, and I'm going to create a little fade on the wet paper, and it just seems to blend so nicely this way. Okay, I'm going to bring it back to being a little bit darker. So I'm going to try and like do a little wet on wet landscape. I want you guys to practice this too. All right. So I have a little wet on wet. Now I'm going to, because this whole area is wet, I'm going to start to add some trees. And it's just going to kind of bleed out beautifully. And bleeding is what drives everybody insane about watercolor, but it's absolutely beautiful when you do it like in a sort of controlled way. So now I'm putting down some land, and we gotta have like a little lake area over here. Okay. We have some nice wet trees. The background, everything is blending and bleeding really nicely. Oh, I didn't mean to go into the blue, but that ended up being really pretty. Okay, so wet on wet landscape. Let it blend, kind of control it, let it just kind of happen the way it's supposed to.